So I've got the inspiring, the activating, the truly enlightening Jason Shurka in the house today. It's super awesome to share awareness with you in this now moment in the quantum field. Jason, I've really been looking forward to this chat that we're having today. I'm going to do you a... Oh, thank you so much for being here, really, truly, from my heart. I'm going to do you a little intro. So Jason is the author of 2 books, Forming the Formless and The Language of Energy, both of which I've read. And I've got to say, I'm really impressed in the way that you've managed to distill really complex information into bite-sized chunks that are easy to understand. I think that's the true work of the Lightworker right now. I mean, one of the most important roles is to empower and educate, which you're doing so beautifully, to reprogram and to just offer up a higher perspective for those who are resonant with the message and ready for it. Absolutely. Jason is what I would call, you're a conscious custodian of, you're what I would call an honorable trustee as well of the Pyramid Code and the Rays of Light, the much anticipated Rays of Light. I've really enjoyed hearing excerpts from that text, and they're both sacred texts that stem from TLS, the light system, which, as I understand, you are not a part of, but you work alongside. And you're privy to a lot of that information, which I find so intriguing, so fascinating. I read the Pyramid Code twice, and I'm about to read it a 3rd time because it's packed full of so much information. It is coded in itself, for sure. I got to say, you're absolutely smashing it with creating community and just busting through the censorship right now. And you're building new platforms. I think the Academy of Divine Knowledge relaunches in its new form May 5th. Is that right?
May 5th. That should be the date, so long as everything goes according to plan. Yeah, May 5th, 5/5.
5/5, love it. And I see what you're doing there, because you are empowering the individual to become empowered, to empower others.
Yep. And
I just want to jump right into this medical media cartel hijacking of consciousness, right? This psycho-spiritual informational warfare we find ourselves in. And this it's this attempted big tech takedown, right? That is just affecting everything and everyone. And even you on Wix.com, I think you said, in Patreon. I mean, it's... Yeah. Oh, it's everywhere. It just, me too. I've been kicked off Twitter. My Facebook is completely stifled. I have to be very careful on YouTube. And I want the film to stay up because it is a message of hope and higher vibration. So it's very difficult to toe that line. And you do so really beautifully. And what I notice is that you teach in a way that you're really encouraging people to use everything in life as a tool, whether it's food or breath or water or words or time or even the matrix itself. And I'm really aware of your conscious use of technology in that way. So my first question for you is, how are you staying sane? Like, how are you coping with the emotional highs and lows whilst navigating this, complete trifurcation of timelines in such a compromised digital landscape?
Sure. Well, how am I staying sane? That's a great question. Listen, I can't say that it's not difficult sometimes, because it is. I have my own breakdowns. I go crazy sometimes. I just keep it a little bit more to myself rather than go publicly with that. Because we all go through our things. Everybody's human. That's part of the human experience. We go through whatever we go through, and that's a part of life, whether we're doing things publicly or not. And with the world that we're experiencing today, if we're talking specifically about the censorship, there's really a fine line of how to navigate that, with kind of balancing between playing their game, but putting out what needs to be put out according to their rules. So it's kind of like being a lawyer of their own algorithm and understanding how to twist and bend their rules to not do exactly what they want or don't want you to do. So it takes... I'll give you an example. I came out with a 2-part documentary called COVID-19 Exposed. Part 1 came out on October 26, 2020. Part 2 came out March 22nd, 2021, just a few weeks ago. And the my biggest sort of hurdle with the film was the first time I put it out, I said, what am I going to do? Am I going to put it on YouTube? Am I going to put it on Instagram? What do I want to risk? Are they going to deplatform? How do we do it? And that in and of itself made me go crazy, because you have a message in your hand, you want to put it. And the questions come up of, can I do this without being completely deleted and erased? So we decided, don't put it on Instagram because it's a more of a short attention span platform. Let's put it on YouTube. And I said, am I going to open up a new account, or am I going to use mine because we have a following? I said, listen, I'm going to use mine. Worst case, they give me a strike, because the way their algorithm works, they have rules. 3 strikes, you're out. So we could have afforded one. I took the chance. I put it on. Few days, reached hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, completely deleted, given a strike on my account. It was a problem. But once again, we're playing their game and beating them at it. So in one way, it's like it makes you go crazy, but you got to play the game. It's the name of the game. That's how you do it. So then I said, okay, well, now we're coming out with part 2, which was in March. How do we do it differently? So I said, I'm not going to put this one on YouTube or Instagram or any mainstream platform, because now if we get 2 strikes, then we only have 1 left and we got a problem. So we can't do that, because if we lose that platform, we lose a lot of, we lose the whole purpose of what we're trying to do here, because we still need to reach people. So part 2, I decided to put on my website. Now, forget about the fact that my website already stopped me from being able to make an income from their back end, because of certain censored information that I put there that was censored elsewhere with David Icke and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Judy Mikovits and many others. I said, I'm going to put it on my website. I have nothing else to lose. Take down my website. I'll build a new one. It's all good. I could save the newsletter. We'll just transfer it. No problem. I'm showing you the thought process of how we navigate these things for anybody else that may be going through it. And long story short, I put it on my website, but I said, okay, well, I'm going crazy again, because how are we going to get people to see it? Because we need this to reach millions. So I started a sort of campaign where I went live with a bunch of different doctors and individuals on Instagram talking live. Some of them were saved. Some of them were deleted right after, letting people know a week before March 22nd, on this date and this time, the movie will show up on this platform. Listen, it reached, I think it was like 300,000 or 400,000 people in the first 24 hours. Wow. On a private platform, on a platform that isn't mainstream. So the reason why I'm sharing this is to show that even with all the resistance that we're being met with, if we meet the resistance with resistance, we're going to have a problem. And the way that I stay sane is I acknowledge the resistance, I accept the resistance, and then we come up with a rational plan of how the hell are we going to move around it, not fight it, because if we fight it, it gets stronger. So how are we going to get around it? How are we going to use the platform that they don't want me to speak on about certain things in a way to do exactly what our goal is? And that's what we're doing. We're using the platform to put trailers instead of the movie. We bleep out certain words. After the movie came out, all trailers were deleted off of mainstream platforms because we didn't want to take the chance. So we're doing everything we can to expand out of the box while staying in their box. And I think that's really the trick, that one has to find the balance in when doing this work, because people don't want the collective to know the truth. People don't want, those people at least, don't want us to be aware of our true power, because control would no longer be possible. So the key is, how do we expand awareness? How do we leave the box multidimensionally in a way while remaining in their box? And the example that I just gave you is one of, I'm sure, many ways of being able to do something like that.
Oh, beat them at their own game. I love it. That's what we have to do, basically. I don't know if there is any other option, really. It's the 5D chess game, right? It's finding those gentle red pills. It's finding ways to communicate this information, ways to get around it. This is what I keep saying, is it's requiring us light workers, or those who just want to see a better humanity, if you don't resonate with that label, so to speak, just to be more innovative, to be more inventive and creative. That's part of this renaissance of consciousness, right? Absolutely. Like, dig deeper, find new ways, get resourceful. And also, I just think it's so essential to become aware of how we're being manipulated. I think it's a threefold paradigm. So we're being manipulated through reality, right? Esokinesis. We're being manipulated through time, chronokinesis, and we're being manipulated through our probability fields, psychokinesis. Sorry, it's tychokinesis. Yeah, those are words I learned recently.
All of those three things have one thing in common. And it has to do with our awareness.
Yes.
Because we wouldn't be able to be manipulated through any of those things if we were aware of how those things work in the first place, because those things are not fundamental realities. Everything that you just labeled is a relative reality. It's not a part of the fundamental nature of the universe. And the more we understand that, for anybody that might be turning their head like this at this point, the more we understand that time is something we experience linearly, but that's not how it exists objectively and fundamentally. The more we understand that, the closer we get to actually experience that. And suddenly the life that we once thought was this limited life of physicality that has a creation, destruction, or birth and death, or beginning and end, and so on and so forth, is really something that's limitless and infinite. And it doesn't just have to do with the limited awareness that we experience through the physical nature and lens that we experience through.
Yes, absolutely. I get you 100%. And it's up to us to really understand that the powers that were, as I like to call them, or those who pull the strings right now, so to speak, they have a precise understanding of this manipulation of, I call it quantum computing, right? Of how to really manipulate the manifested outcomes that we see. That's the probability fields, right? So I call it a timeline battle. But if you understand timelines, it's really directly related to choice. So if we break that down to a level of individual understanding, what does that look like in my personal life when I just, am struggling with lockdown and I might or might not want to break up with my boyfriend, like the things that happen to all of us, these human experiences. How do we break it down so we can use and apply that concept in our daily lives?
Can't hear you. You just kicked out.
Did I kick out?
Oh, no. Now I hear you. I hear you.
It's my internet connection. Let me check it here. I'm in the studio here. Oh, okay. Did you hear the question? I think I'm back. How's that?
Okay, now you're back. Yes, now I hear
Apologies.
You.
It's a little spotty in here, the internet.
All good. I'd like to add something to what you just said, because I think it's really important to point out these individuals and organizations and certain people that are pulling those strings, in a way, and hear me out till the end, they are light workers. They're just using the light working for other intentions.
Yes.
Now, they're doing manifestation at its finest. They're using codes at their finest. They know how these things work. The only difference, and in that way, they are light workers. We just identify light workers with somebody with a positive intention. But for the actual thing that connects everybody is working the light. The question is, are you working the light to do something dark, or you're working the light with an intention of awakening and expanding the collective awareness of humanity? And they're geniuses at what they do because they have the awareness that they have and the information that they hold of how do we manifest? How do we create? How do we do X, Y, and Z? Now, once again, the same principles by which they work by, somebody doing something great would work by as well. The only difference is, what is our intention when using those, when operating through that level of awareness? And that's the important, really, thing that needs to be pointed out here, because if it really has to do with our intention of how we're using it. A knife can be used to make a salad. A knife can be used to kill somebody. Doesn't mean the knife is bad. It's the codes are powerful. The principles are powerful. How we choose to use it has to do with what you said, our freedom of choice.
Yes, and it's true light versus false light, because we have the power within us to create or destroy. We are creator beings. We are creation itself,
Yes.
Masquerading as human beings, essentially. So the power comes down to us and our abilities to choose, and we can choose to understand how to decode, how to play them at their own game, how to be victorious in the truth, in the light of benevolence across the universe, of unity consciousness, and becoming our cosmic Christed selves, that highest version of us. So I noticed that your theme for April is expansion. So that all fits in really nicely. It all dovetails beautifully. So can I ask you to elaborate on expansion? What are we expanding upon? How is that going to help us in this ascension process?
Well, ascension is expansion. Expansion is ascension. That's the name of the game. That's what we're here to do. And once again, we have the freedom of choice. We can choose to remain stagnant because we're comfortable where we are, or at least we're comfortable with being uncomfortable, and at least we're comfortable, so let's stay where we are. Or we can choose to ascend and expand and keep moving forward, even if it becomes uncomfortable, and even if that means that we enter an abyss of the unknown at some points, which is also the name of the game. That's a very big part of growth, not knowing what's going to happen next, but trusting that it's happening in a divine manner. Now, when it comes to expansion, every month I tune into what I'm feeling on the individual level, on the collective level, and what I think has to be paid attention to based on what's coming in. And this month was all about, and is all about, expansion in every way. Expansion of our awareness, expansion on our tools, expansions on teachings and lessons, expansion on ourselves, expansion on projects that we never had the courage to take on, but we're going to do that right now. And the Academy of Divine Knowledge is a perfect example of the resonance of this month. We're launching a brand new academy with incredible teachers that, and special guests that in my wildest dreams, I never thought that I'd be connecting with, and we are. And it's because there's a resonance that's going on here. And that resonance is we are expanding. There's nothing that actually exists as a limitation. And part of expansion, part of this month is losing the limited belief systems that we hold that limit us in the first place, because we're not, our beliefs limit us in and of themselves. And if we don't think somebody is too big for us, if we don't think that somebody is so good that they won't come to speak on an interview, then, that's exactly what's going to happen. But that's not what expansion looks like. Expansion, at least the way I see it, is honoring and embracing the idea that we are infinite, that when something explodes, even though physically it may look like it has an end, that effect, that energy, that impact has a butterfly effect that will never end. And that's what expansion looks like. It's an infinite energy that goes on forever. And in a sense, never began, never will end, because that doesn't exist on the level of energy. It always was, is, and always will be. And that's what I really wanted to bring forth in the resonance of this month with everything that we do.
Oh, I call it being poised on the edge of chaos, where we rightfully belong, where we're expanding, but at a rate that isn't unstable, where we knock ourselves into anxiety and the whole system becomes unstable, but that we also don't fall back into entropy, which I think is like lost through time, basically, where we're then freezing the system, so to speak, and we're not expanding at all, because we're all contributing to that expansion all the time with every emotion that we process. I like to bring everything back to emotions, because that's kind of one of the main focuses of this channel, because in my opinion, it's the interface to super consciousness, to these higher levels of being, and to the expansion itself of the universe, right? And I think the hologram in that way, if you look at it, is like offering up a perfect diametric reflection of what is unresolved in self. If we're willing to do that work, that is the ultimate expansion contribution. 100%. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. Yes. It's a very powerful way to see everything, because it empowers you.
Yes, absolutely. And I've heard you say that everything in the matrix is an exact reflection of what you already are.
Well, that's because everything in the matrix, you can only experience it and perceive it because it's happening through you. So you being, and I can explain that in a very simple way. Just like you would go on any website or web page on the computer, if you right click on any website, you'll see a button that pops up that says view page source. If you click view page source, it will open up, and I encourage everybody to do this, it will open up a new window on your screen that shows a massive code. And what we once experienced as a Facebook page or a YouTube page or whatever it is, we suddenly see that it's not the page that we're experiencing on the screen. It's actually a code that's made of numbers and symbols and all these different characters that are put together with no spaces in between them. It's a long code that doesn't end. And somehow on the screen, we still see a space between the like button and the comment button, and so on and so forth. And the reason why that's so important is because the computer in and of itself is the mechanism that decodes that code to give us the experience of the Facebook page. If you had a different computer, you wouldn't see the Facebook page the same. If the computer were to decode that code differently, you'd see a completely different thing on your screen. Now, how does that translate to application? Well, that's how we work. How do we see? Our eyes decode vibrations in the air into light, into perception. Our ears decode vibrations in the air into sound, so we can hear. Our skin does the same, so we can feel, and our nose does the same, so we can smell. And all of these things are different tools and devices in a way that are decoding the code. Now, if you can shift the device, you shift the way that you decode the code, and therefore you perceive things differently. That's how awareness works. Your awareness, as your awareness changes, what does ascension actually mean? Ascension means, well, on the surface, you're going to start perceiving things differently. You'll start being more aware of things that you weren't aware of before. You may begin to start seeing things that you couldn't see at a different level of awareness because you're tuning into other resonances. But as you tune into other resonances, you're actually changing the way that your devices decode the code, and you see things differently. So all in all, we are creating everything, because the only reason why we're perceiving in the first place is because this matrix, this code, is flowing through us. And we're the conduits and the mediums that allow this code to be decoded as what we call reality. In other words, what's on the computer screen. And when we understand that completely, not just through conceptual understanding, but through experience, the next step that we'll get to is, all right, we understand how those things work. Now, how do we change the code? Because if you know anything about building a website, you'll know that you build the website based on how you code it. And if you change the code, you change the website. That's where conscious manifestation comes in at a much higher level of awareness. And as we move through our ascension process, we will learn how these codes work. But if we're given that too soon, it's almost like giving the code to apple.com or youtube.com to somebody that has ill intentions with the website. They can do harm. And right now, and I'm using those companies because they're some of the biggest companies in the world.
Sure.
So you're talking about a universal code here. You give us that on the collective level too soon, where we're not ready to be responsible with that and how to use it, we can destroy a lot of things here. And that's why I think things like the pyramid code and things like rays of light and their codes are not being released right now, because we're not yet at the point where we can handle them in a responsible way.
Right. And I was going to ask you that question. Does that also apply to the quantum financial system as well, like Jasara and Nasara?
It could. I don't know too much about the quantum financial system. So I can't speak on that behalf. But if there's one thing that I learned, it's everything's connected to everything. So I'm sure the answer is yes. I just don't necessarily know how.
Right. Well, I think first and foremost, why don't we just focus on our emotional climate, our emotional footprint. And in my opinion, that's going to expand consciousness. And then that's going to be the thing that helps us, look at the carbon footprint that's such a problem, and everything else physical will fall into place, that coherence. So words are also codes, right? And you talk a lot about words, gematria, the alphanumeric coding of our language. I'm a big believer in using words impeccably. It's one of the best bits of advice I've ever been given, is be impeccable with your word. And that means don't say, the 4 agreements, exactly. Don't take things personally. And I think I forgot the other 2 right now. But to be impeccable with your word is key. And that's like don't say yes when you mean no. Don't be inconsistent and do something and say the other. It's all of those closing the gap, if you will, between your true self and your false self.
Absolutely.
Right. So words are another way that we can be victorious, I think, to this really intelligent platform that is organizing all these crimes against humanity, right? So what does that look like in our everyday lives?
I want to touch up on something.
Sure, go for it.
The people, the organizations, crimes against humanity, and all of that, through the experience of physicality, through the human experience that we experience now, daily, every day, we see those individuals and organizations as harming us because we experience through our level of awareness, us and them.
Yes.
And I mean, it's not true. It is true because that's how we experience it. However, if we were to go to the level of energetic foundation of what's actually going on here, they are us, we are them. There is no us and them. There's we. Okay, we're one big collective. We're one group mind. In that group mind, in that group consciousness, we have behaviors like that, and we have the opposite side of the spectrum as well. Because we don't yet truly understand what would be called the law of one, and understanding that we are all one, we see it as a game of us and them. They're coming and taking us down because that's how we experience it. But the deeper we get into it, the more we'll understand very, very clearly that they are a creation of us because they are us. In other words, the collective experience of reality is a creation of the collective consciousness. And if you want to go to an extreme, you can take Hitler. Hitler did not come to us. Hitler was created by us. It was a consciousness that came through as a creation, as a person, as an individual that did what he did. And through separation consciousness, or what I would call Hitler consciousness, regardless of Adolf Hitler as himself, I'm calling Hitler consciousness as the consciousness of division, separation. Okay? We're still acting through that today because Hitler consciousness can do something like the Holocaust. Hitler consciousness also comes from the idea of if there's a starving child in Africa and I'm doing good and I'm making money, then I don't really care. That's Hitler consciousness. We just don't see it the same because there was such an extreme of millions of people being burned and killed in gas chambers and all that at that time. But the consciousness is the same. And so long as we act out of that separation consciousness, to make it a little less severe so we don't use such a harsh name there, but separation consciousness is something we still act out of. And even enlightened people and people going through their awakening look at others and put the blame on them. Now, so long as we're doing that, awakened or not, awakening or not, whatever it is, we're still acting out of separation consciousness. Because the moment we'll be able to change is the moment that on the collective level, we understand that everything that we don't like in our world is a creation of ourselves.
Yes.
Now, the question that comes up is, how does that work on the individual level of experience? What if I myself, an individual, am not in resonance with the collective? That's another idea coming out of separation consciousness. You can call you yourself all you want. And on one hand, you're an individual, but you make up the collective. Okay, there's no such thing as you separate from anybody else. That's not how things work. We experience it that way, but that's not how things work. And things are dictated by the collective. Now, can one individual have the power to shift the collective? Absolutely. But so long as the collective is in a place, there will be outliers that feel differently. Until those outliers, those minorities become the majority, our experience is dictated by the consciousness of the majority. Yes. And that's how we sort of interact between the relationship of what we experience as the individual and the true fundamental nature of reality as the collective experience and the collective consciousness.
God, I love it. I'm just literally hanging on your every word because you have such a beautiful way of explaining it that makes sense. you know? And just to tag that back into something that you'd said earlier, sense, sensation, sentience, ascension, root word, we're all sensory beings. We are energetic transmitters and receivers of energy, as you said.
Absolutely.
Right. And to understand that everything is of that field, right?
Yeah.
I think there's that thing of we're in the matrix, but not of the matrix. And you know, and it gets into, we can't have light without the dark, you know, what creates form. This is something that I'm really getting into lately, actually. And it goes nicely into something I really wanted to ask you about divine will and free will.
I'm
right?
putting out a video probably tomorrow about that one. Yeah, we could talk
Are
about
you?
it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just fascinating to me that like our entire matrix is really built on a balance sheet, right? So like all the scientists in the world are coming to the conclusion that, I mean, the sum of all forces in the universe cancel out to zero. And that's an incredible balancing act our universe is performing all the time at any given moment in the quantum field. And that this void is offering up, the way I understand it, and this is from a lot of interviews that I've done with quantum scientists and et cetera, is really offering up this equal and opposing forces that we now know of as electromagnetism and gravity. And that creates form from this curvature in space-time by connecting two different points, right? And these two different points are mirror reflections of vibration. So the sacred geometry that's underpinning physicality is a grand interplay between this sonic vibration, our electromagnetic grid, and photonic light, right? And that's all in resonance, and that then creates sound, but we infuse it with our emotion, right?
Yeah.
So we have an ability to manipulate that divine blueprint, and that's what I would call divine will, right?
Very interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. There's more to it, but do you have something to say to that?
No. Go ahead. I'll chime in right after.
Okay. So then, you know, being energetic avatars, right? Masquerading as humans, and it's in the word hue, light, human beings, we are that. We are not dancing in it or we're interplaying it or even interplaying with it. We are that completely, right? So then it goes into how we manipulate timelines, how we consciously and responsibly use our ability to create form and manifest and to use our consciousness in optimum ways. And I think the feeling realm and dimension is how we learn how to do that. So if I break it all down, it's like, how do we align with the 0 point, which is this neutrality that we've identified as kind of the singularity that is the optimum, the antidote to the chaos, the ascension code, if you like. But how do we align with it and make that sustainable? And how do we use our emotions to access it in our daily lives?
Okay. What I would call that is, how do we align with divine will?
Yes.
So here's my understanding, just from my perspective, my own level of awareness of whatever that means. There's divine will and there's free will. And this is a really big topic that
Huge.
can go on for a very long time. But
Totally.
Again, I don't like making things complex. I don't believe in making things complex.
Yeah.
I think the way to change the world is being able to speak in a very simple way where a 5-year-old can understand you, a 50-year-old can understand you, and a 100-year-old can understand you.
I love that about you.
So it's all about how do we make things as simple as can be, because they're really not difficult. We can make it difficult with formulas, and you got to be a genius that studied for 50 years, but we can also make it simple. And by the way, that's shown to us in the concept, at least, of Albert Einstein's unified theory of everything.
Yes.
And that is unifying and simplifying everything to 3 components that he didn't finish. And that's the whole thing of what they're trying to finish right now. And Nassim Haramein has taken that on himself to complete that equation. And he's an incredible genius, one of the people that I admire in this world.
Me too.
Amazing. So to go to divine will and free will.
Yes.
Divine will, and I'm going to explain this from a spiritual standpoint, a more philosophical standpoint, in as simple as I can make it. Divine will is the only will that exists when we're not in human form, when we're not in physical form. That means before you came here as an incarnated physical being, whatever that is, whatever being that may be, whatever entity that may be, you were in a formless realm, if we want to call it, in your beingness of pure soul, pure energy, with your own light print, but you not in physical form. In that place, in that dimension, in that realm, the only thing that exists is divine will. Now, where does free will come in? Free will is the foundational, one of the foundational aspects and factors of the human experience. Free will comes in when we incarnate into physical form. That doesn't mean that divine will dissipates. Divine will is where everything comes from. But when you're in human form, free will is the filter that divine will always passes through. And that's what allows us to experience the human experience, to experience the freedom of choice. That means that if you have some sort of intuition, some sort of hit, you got to write a book, you got to do this, you got to, whatever it is, it could be really anything. In many cases, well, in all cases, those are coming from a divine place, from a place of a higher realm, a place that we don't necessarily remember yet or understand in this physical realm. But it is coming from a higher place, a divine place. We call that divine will. I call that divine will. As it comes down to the human is hit with this intuition of, oh my God, I got to do this. Oh my God, I got to do it. Okay. And then it passes through the filter of free will. And free will, that filter says, okay, do I want to do it? Is it worth my time? Is it worth the sacrifice? Is it worth the risk? Do I want to do it? And at that point, although it came from divine will, we have the choice as it passes through this filter of, am I going to say yes? Am I going to say no? And whatever choice that is, that's fine, because that's part of the human experience. We didn't come here, we came here to pass tests, but we also came here to experience what's it like not to pass a test. We need that experience of both sides. And
because it provides the contrast, right?
100%. And on a personal level, there were times where I was given certain things and told to do certain things. And I said, no, I don't want to do that right now. And I practiced my freedom of choice, even though I knew it came from a place of divine will. So the question is, are we going to align ourselves on the level of free will with divine will? Mm-hmm. And that's the choice that we all have the opportunity to make in our physical experience of being a human being or whatever other being we are. If you're not from this place, if you happen to be a different being, another form of life, whatever it may be. And for example, when I came out with the pyramid code, that came from a place where I knew, but before thinking about it rationally, I have to do it. I have to say, yes, I got to come out with it. I have to do it.
Yes.
And then there was the free will of, oh my God, am I really doing this? Do I want to do it? Right? Divine will always comes much quicker than free will.
I had the same experience with making my films. Yeah.
It's a spark, it's just like, boom. Then we start asking ourselves, do we want to do it? Then we have people coming and telling us, maybe you should, this is what, and X, Y, and Z. And we have to make that choice. And for me, when it came to something like the pyramid code, that was such a powerful divine will that I didn't even see myself as having the choice. Meaning I could have said no, but I didn't see that as an option because it was so powerful in my experience that I had to align that with free will. Yes. There are other situations where I was given certain things and I said, no, I don't want to do it right now. I find it to be dangerous. It can do X, Y, and Z. I don't want to do it. No problem. Free will. But for anybody that's going through some sort of, for any one of us that's going through some sort of experience right now where there's something coming through divine will and something filtering through free will, The question that I encourage everybody to ask themselves is, well, number one, never judge yourself, no matter what choice you make. But when you're making the choice, remind yourself that you came here to align yourself with divine will. And if we do align ourselves with divine will time and time again, we will succeed in passing the test that we set up for ourselves before we came here. That's why we're here. That's why we experience the life that we experience. We came here to align with our divine will. And we know that alignment exists because of the contrast, because we've been in a place of not aligning with that. So wherever you are in your life, and this is to any listener out there, wherever you are in your life, always ask yourself, when something comes in, you're not sure where to head with that thing, remind yourself that you came here to pass the test. You gave yourself the test, whether you remember that or not. So do what you came here to do, be what you came here to be, and align your free will with your divine will, because we have an opportunity to do that always.
Oh, my God, I love it. And that is so simplified, because I can geek out. I love trying to understand the science. I'm like, dude, how does it work? Teach me how it works. And I mean, I flunked physics in high school, like, so this is a new me, but I can't get enough of understanding, because it makes me feel powerful when I have that knowledge. And then Absolutely. I feel like I can take a little bit more command over it. And I think science is a tool like anything else that we can use, but then we also don't want to be limited by scientism, or because it all hinges upon the consciousness of the scientist. You're right, the science itself. So we're constantly busting through the glass ceilings over and over again. But what you just said really aligns with what I've learned from Magenta Pixie's work. She calls it convergence points.
Awesome.
And basically, like, you have linear pathways, right? Choices you can make: pathway A, pathway B, pathway C, and you can choose to create a new timeline from this 3D linear level. But then when you align your free will with destiny, it's a preordained or predestined blueprint. And I get into this in my second film a bit, where you can control that from the higher perspective. And that is like, oh, right, I can completely change this. I can break a soul contract here. I can nullify that. And that's really coming into alignment with fate, what we call fate. But we misunderstand fate and think that it's something that we can't change, but it's malleable because we're co-creating it all the time. So the more that we are in alignment with that higher order, that higher perspective, all that is, I'm not afraid of the G word. I love the word God in a very I call it good orderly design, where we're being able to create the infrastructure. It's why I surround myself with this architecture of life, the image of the Fibonacci sequence and the divine natural order, the organic timeline, if you will, of life. But that is so interesting to me, because then it's chosen for you. So you could say, in a sense, you don't have free will there because it's been chosen for you, but you wouldn't want to change it because it is in alignment with your ultimate destiny. And that's ultimate freedom. That's ultimate independence. That's what we're seeking here on the earth plane. And that's why all these self-imposed, self-induced limitations come into play to serve us. As you so beautifully mentioned, we cannot have, this experience without having the contrast provided for us by that which is our manifestation of the powers that were, the power elite, the cabal, whatever you want to call it. And to me, aligning with that is ascension.
Yes.
So we're getting right back into that again. So I love this conversation because it's weaving all the threads together, and you're really helping me do that. Can we switch gears and talk about ETs for a minute? The 10 dimensions, shape-shifting. I mean, where do you want to start?
Let's do it.
It's one of my pet subjects.
Where do you want to start?
So you're aware of the 3 ET races. One of them is connected with Pleiades. Is that right?
I don't know. I know
you don't know. Okay. I don't know if I interpreted that.
Like them. I don't know if they're the same one.
Okay.
They look like them according to their description, at least. According to the Palladian description. But I don't know if they're the same one. What's interesting here, okay, here's what I like a lot about this whole thing. I'll give you a little story. I was on Gaia filming for a few shows to talk about this. And after it went into editing, they said, well, listen, you're coming here with names that nobody's ever heard before. You're coming here with races that nobody's ever spoken about before. Where's your credibility? And I had a very simple question right back. I said, well, on one hand, we're talking about the Palladians and the Greys and all that, and they may all totally exist. I don't have experience with them. They may all totally exist. Where is their credibility? And the answer was, well, a lot of people seem to have channeled them and experienced them and speak about them and so on and so forth. And I said, all right, well, the three races that I brought up, two of them are written in ancient texts in depth in something called the Zohar in when was it, 1500 or 2000 years ago when it was recorded. We don't see the Palladians and the Greys with those names spoken about 2000 years ago. So I said, if there's anything more credible, we see that people were writing about this 2000 years ago. Now, by the way, I didn't know that they were in that book when I brought them to the public. I was given certain information. I was given permission to put out certain information. I put it out. Suddenly I received like literally thousands of messages of excerpts from the Zohar, which is like an ancient book of mysticism and all that was written thousands of years ago, talking about all of these things, fitting the exact descriptions of what I was sharing from one of the races called Sia, or in Hebrew, it comes from a Hebrew word, Sia, or another race called Nashia. There was only one of the three races that I've never heard anywhere who goes by the name of Konom, Konom.
Yeah.
And they, in description at least, look, I guess, somewhat like the Greys, but a little different. They're more like dolphin-looking creatures. They're like 3.5 feet tall, let's say, something like that. But their neck is very, very wide, and their face kind of comes out like a dolphin. They have arms and legs, but a very simple body, not as complex as the human being with all these curves and all this. Everything's straight lined. They have the ability, like we have joints, they don't have joints. They can curve wherever they want. They're like you can move wherever it goes. Their skulls, by the way, I don't know why I'm sharing this right now, but we'll share it. Their skulls are made of some sort of like metal, which actually has to do, and we over here would look at that as like, that's not natural. Well, it is. Metal is also a part of the elements in the periodic table. I don't know exactly what it is, but their skulls, because of the material that it's made out of, is conducive and gives them the ability to do many of their abilities. Like, I mean, they can connect telepathically. They can also move things and do incredible things. A big part of it is through their skulls and whatever it's made out of. But yeah, where do you want to start on them? I know I just went off on a tangent.
Well, I guess my first question was, do you have personal interactions with them, or is this information that you've been given?
So I'm not allowed to share my in-depth, and this is just straight from TLS. There are certain things that I can say. There are certain things that I can't. I just have to follow my instructions.
Sure.
But part of my instructions, and it's not just with ETs, it's with other experiences as well. Until now, and maybe that will change, but I'm not allowed to explicitly say what I've seen and where I've been, what I've done. What I can tell you is I've never been to their planet. I know people who have. I've never been to their planet. So any planetary attributes that I've shared are not coming from my own experience. Planetary attributes are coming from somebody that's been there, that I know on a very personal level, that I know has been there, that's worked there, that works with them, and gave me the information on that level. But I can't go too into depth on where certain information comes from on my own experience. And if I had to guess why, maybe for protection purposes. So nobody has anything on me if it were to get further.
Sure, I get it. I mean, Ray has been...
I never actually said anything.
Got it. Ray has been to the planets, is that right? From Rays of Light?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So if you were to give us the macro view of why they're involved in TLS and what their role is, what would that be?
Intergalactic unity, assimilation, helping humanity reach a higher level of consciousness, higher level of awareness, sharing gifts energetically without us even knowing what they're doing. They're here, they're among us. Some of them have shifted into human form, so you would think that they're human beings and they're not. and some of them haven't, and they come back and forth. But their technology is extremely advanced. Their technology completely supersedes and exceeds our understandings of our laws of physics. And the reason why, by the way, is our laws of physics are also not fundamental truths. Our laws of physics are created and based off of what we can comprehend as laws in the first place. And our comprehension is dictated by our awareness. So as our awareness expands, as our awareness increases, what we once thought was impossible suddenly becomes possible. So when you tell somebody that they travel 1 trillion light years in the equivalent of what we would experience as 4 or 5 minutes, people look at you like that's impossible because the speed of light is the fastest thing there is. And no, it's not. Actually, thought is the fastest thing that there is because it's omnipresent, it's omnipotent, it's everywhere, always. And they use something called the power of thought to operate their crafts. They understand that their crafts are no less alive than they are because everything, whether tangible or not, is connected to a unified field of consciousness. And as a matter of fact, their crafts, if you were to go into one, and I can't speak on behalf of all of them, but some of them have like a panel that it's some sort of panel made out of glass or crystal or whatever it is. There are no seats like you see in the movies. It's not like seats with seat belts. It doesn't work like that. They have a bar that they can hold on to in case anything gets a little shaky. But they stand up, they put their hand on this panel. Through the power of thought, their hand is the connection which connects their power of thought to the craft. The craft ends up being and becoming an extension of their own consciousness, and therefore the craft acts according to their level of awareness and their consciousness. So somebody like a regular human being here on Earth that's not at that level of awareness, and I can't speak for all, but most of us are not at that level of awareness, so we wouldn't be able to transcend the laws of physics as we know them today because we really believe the laws of physics to be true. Yeah. As we expand, as we ascend and reach higher states of awareness, the consciousness by which that craft would work on would exceed and defy the laws of physics as we know them today because the consciousness defies the laws of physics as we know them today.
And as far as I understand as well from talking to multiple experiencers, channels, and astrophysicists like Dr. Rudolf Schild at Harvard, he's actually associated with the Harvard Smithsonian Institute. They've all said that there's an emotive component to it as well. And that,
emotive, like emotional?
Yes, emotional. Yes, because it's woven into the fabric of consciousness itself, and you can't separate the two. So it's a sentient craft. What we say as UFOs are actually a sentient projection of consciousness, right? Does that jive exactly with what you're saying?
100%. It's all connected to a unified field. We're taught in science today, our level of science at least, that this is not alive. And it is, because it's connected to the same thing that we're connected to. When you understand that, you can move this without touching it.
Yes.
But we first have to not just understand it, we have to understand it to such an extent that it becomes a part of our awareness so we can experience it.
Totally. Water, crystals, they imprint memory. They're tape recorders. Yep. They're absolutely alive. And we're made of that too. There is truly no separation. You said it earlier, but everything you say just reinforces that more and more. I'm keeping an eye on the time. Can we do a quick fire round? You said, since your essence exists in every dimension exists within you. And you've broken it down into 10 dimensions. What's the most important element to kind of take away from that knowledge if you were to just break it down into like a simple nutshell lesson?
Sure. Quick question. The 10 dimensions, I know you just got that. That was from my book, correct?
Yes.
Just remind me, because I really don't remember. Did I write that there were 10 dimensions in the book? I know the 10 dimensions you're speaking about that I made videos of.
Yes, that's what I'm speaking of, the videos. And you can go from the baseline dimensions, work your way up. I kind of, when I heard you speak about that, I associated it with the emotional continuum. So you get like the lower vibrational emotions, because I'm always trying to relate it back to that, how consciousness relates to emotion, the sacred geometry of emotion. It's just an experience of frequency, and we are the experiencer. having the sentient experience, right? So the baseline emotion is like suicidal thoughts come from helplessness, hopelessness, uselessness, those feelings. And then you work your way up to, you know, bliss, unity, consciousness, gratitude, and then you have the range in between.
It's all resonance. Yeah, it's all resonance energy that you move through. So to answer your question, the 10 dimensions was something I was taught. It was something that the reason why I asked you if I wrote in that book was because I was taught it after that book, but I haven't read my first book in a while, and I don't even remember what I put in there.
Interesting.
So I was wondering if I wrote it subconsciously without even understanding what I was writing.
I might have picked it up from a video though, because I've been...
Yes, I know I made a video called The 10 Dimensions. So I'll give a quick little lesson and then explain the understanding of what that actually means.
Thank you.
What I was taught through Ray specifically, who gave me this teaching on a first-hand basis, is that there are 10 different dimensions. When we're referring to 10 dimensions, we're referring to different states of awareness. That's what dimensions are. And the reason why I'm clarifying that is because terminology can be the end-all be-all of disagreement. So I always try to define the terminology because, I mean, if you read the law of one, let's say, you can call them densities, and there are only 7 densities in the laws of one. So in the law of one. So this is coming from a different lens. Terminology may be different based on where you're coming from. So just do your best to adjust accordingly and see how this fits into your level of understanding with what you were taught. So 10 different dimensions. I know the names of the first 5. Again, states of dimensional awareness is really the right words for it.
Love it.
As you move through them, number 1, and science calls them brainwave frequencies or brainwave patterns. They're much bigger than that. They're much wider than that, and they have a lot more use. So number 1, beta. Number 2, beta, alpha, theta, gamma. I'm sorry, beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma. Those are the names of the first 5. Now, we're familiar with those names because of the brainwave states that they can measure, right?
Sure.
But when it comes down to it, from the teaching that I was given, at least, there are 10. I don't know the name of the last 5. I know one of them is named Omega. I don't know where that stands. But I don't know the name of the last 5. It also doesn't matter. The way that they're structured is broken down into 10 different portions each. Mm-hmm. Now, for anybody that sees this as a limited understanding or limited thing, it's not. Because even if there are 10 dimensions, each one in and of themselves are infinite. Just like if you were to take a ruler that's 12 inches that we see as a limited spectrum from 0 to 12, if I said cut it in half until it disappears, you will never get to 0. And that's how we understand that everything in and of itself, every one of these dimensions are infinite. But for practical purposes, they're broken down to 10 different dimensions, each dimension, 10 different portions. So you have beta 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, gamma 3, 4, 5, 6, delta 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. Everyone has 10 portions. As you move through the parts of each, what you're really doing is doing the equivalent of ascension. Yes. But with ascension, you can go both ways in the spectrum. You can go up, you can bring yourself down based off of your freedom of choice and what you choose to do in this form, in this life. Everybody is born on a specific state of dimensional awareness. Now, beta and alpha, more on the level of materialistic things. As you move into theta, delta, you're getting more into spirituality, meditation, prayer, out-of-body experiences, things of that nature. As you move into gamma, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you can do the equivalent of levitation, flight with the body, things that completely defy the laws of physics because, once again, gamma, the state of awareness of gamma, is beyond and exceeds significantly what we experience today and how we've dictated everything as certain laws. Yes. You can even do things like, literally, if you're in gamma, change the resonance or the density of your body in order to walk through a wall. Let's say you can do that energetically. And today we call it theory. In gamma, it becomes a fact. It becomes a reality. It's no longer theory. Now, everybody, as I said earlier, is born on a specific state of dimensional awareness. And as you move through life, you can either increase and ascend or decrease and descend. based on the choices you make. So 2 years ago, when I was being given this teaching from Ray, I understood that he was taught something called the fetal position method, or the fetal position technique, where he was like literally taught through application how to read an individual of where they were born at on their resonance and state of dimensional awareness, and where they're at the present moment of reading. And I'm like, dude, like you got it.
That's so cool.
Like, let's go. You know, like,
yeah, right? Bring it on.
So he said, okay, he just had to like prepare himself, because it takes some energetic sort of giving out to be able to do something.
Yeah, sure.
I had to lay down in fetal position, and he sort of laid right around me. Had, if I remember, 2 fingers right on my belly button, right where the umbilical cord is, and another few fingers, I think it was 2, I don't remember exactly how it went down, but right on my forehead. And his face and forehead was on the back of my neck, right here. And it lasted for about 10 minutes, where throughout that 10-minute period, he would get like jolts of, there were some portions where he had to go back and he's like, I can't, like, it's too much. I can't, it's a lot. Long story short, 10 minutes later, well, there's a whole other story with that one where he said, go to sleep. And I went to sleep. And when I woke up, he said, what'd you dream of? And I told him my dream. And this is just a whole different thing that I have to share. He said, what'd you dream of? I told him my dream. He said, do you remember seeing the alligator? And I was freaking out, because that's another thing that can be taught. It's called the Dream Bible. If you learn it, you can learn how to go into others' dreams and help plant certain things and many different aspects. It's incredible. But anyways, I asked him, okay, give me the numbers. Like, where am I at? He said, you were born on Delta 8, which is pretty high relative to that thing. But at the time of my reading 2 years ago, I was at a mid-alpha. Now the question is why? Because you could be born, let's say, a gamma, go back down to beta if you do certain things. And throughout my life growing up, as a teenager and all that, drinking and smoking and partying, and the whole deal.
Been there, done that.
Choices had consequences and repercussions.
Yep.
So it goes to show you that even if you're born in a high place, you could descend along the way through our freedom of choice, even if your divine will was something else. And that was really a big motivating factor for me to make certain changes in my life, where today I'm incapable of drinking or smoking or eating certain things anymore, because I'm not in resonance with it. It's not even a resistance. I don't want it.
Yeah.
But through moving through those states of awareness, again, we call them dimensions, but they're states of awareness, you experience things differently. And the best analogy I would give is, think about it like a building. If there's a building with 10 floors and you're on the 2nd floor and you look out the window, you'll only see so much. But as you go to the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th or the 6th or the 7th or the 8th, if you're standing on the 8th floor, you'll suddenly see this view that you saw from the 2nd floor, but a whole lot more expansive. You see a lot more things that you couldn't see from the 2nd floor because you weren't on the 8th floor. But you are the building. That's what I meant by that sentence. You are the entire 10 floors. Our experience of reality is dictated by our awareness. So based on you are the building, but your experience is the floor of the building that you're currently on. And if you're on the 2nd floor, once again, you'll only see so much. It doesn't mean you're not 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because you are. As we go through our ascension, you don't change in the core of your being because you were always that building. What changes is your experience of yourself at the core of your being. And suddenly you see this extremely incredible awareness that allows you not just to see things differently, but to do things differently. And what was impossible suddenly becomes possible. And that's how really, in short, the 10 dimensions would work with an understanding of how we can move through them in both directions. You can take the stairs down, you can take them up, and it's a matter of choice and what we choose to do.
Oh, beautiful. And that, again, all pertains to Ascension. What do you think we should title this video?
I don't know.
The theme has been around ascension, awareness, making these paradigm shifts, using everything as a tool. I mean, that's my favorite thing about you is that you always come back to that. And so it's like, I get a takeaway every time I listen to you. I'm like, aha, I can do that. I can do that today. I can do that right now in my life, and that's what it is. It's about translating this into daily practices to be able to create like sustainable 100%. Devotional living, intentions.
All about tools, all about application. I'm a big person when it comes to application. It's like, why share something if you can't show how to use it?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to show. I think that there are insights and principles and mysticism and teachings and lessons and tools behind everything.
Yes.
And if we can choose to see them, then once we see them, we can share them. And if we can share them, we change the collective. If we change the collective, we change the experience. If we change the experience, we change the world. And ultimately, we're here to change the world. So that's where it all comes from. Application.
Let's do it. It's the applied science of living, right? The art, actually.
I like that.
Right. It's the art of it as well. And not to forget that we're here to have fun too in the process. 100%. We can all take it so seriously. I know I can. And it feels like this heavy weight. And actually, no, we're here to lighten up. You know?
It's all good.
So in closing, I want to ask, what's in the pipeline for you and how can like-minded souls find you?
Absolutely. So, right now, we have our Patreon community, which is going to be more of a place for guided meditations, a place for mini sessions where I bring people on screen with the whole community so we can all learn from one another. And we have a pretty big community there. It's awesome. And everybody's getting to know each other and it's amazing. So that's our Patreon community at patreon.com/JasonShurka. And I'm now launching another platform called the Academy of Divine Knowledge, which we spoke about. And we have some awesome, awesome people on board. And I'll give you some names actually while we're at it. Right here. Okay, we have Dr. Northrup, Dr. Christiane Northrup, Dr. Palevsky, Del Bigtree, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Nassim Haramein, Dr. Seth Gerlach, Emery Smith, David Icke, Michael Jaco, Aaron Abke, Judy Mikovits, Alex Zek, Sayer G. So many. It keeps going. It keeps going. And all of these people are coming together as teachers and special guests to give back to the community in a way where we can come together and apply this knowledge, where we can come together and learn, where we can come together and ascend through not just the sunshine and rainbows part of everything, but through shedding light on the darkness, because the only way you change the darkness is by knowing that it exists and how it exists in the first place, because you got to learn about it before you can change it. And it's really a unified platform where all of that happens. So that's going to be launching soon at it's academyofdk.com, academyofdk.com, like divine knowledge. And and I'm really looking forward to it. And I look forward to seeing all the teachers that are going to come on. We even have a Become a Teacher tab and become a special guest for people that I'm all for. I don't just want the people that already made it. It's great to have the people, but there are a lot of people in the world that have to be heard, that have incredible messages that aren't heard. And my dream is to be able to give them a platform to be heard. So part of what we're doing in the Academy of Divine Knowledge is just that, having people, giving them a platform to be heard because they have messages to share with the world to help us ascend on a collective level.
I am so right there with you. To be a leader is to empower others to become leaders. That's the true.
Absolutely.
I've heard you say this. That's the true definition of leadership, and what an all-star cast, but also to give those opportunities to other people. Because we all have an important piece to the puzzle, every single one of us. And we can't change what we don't own, and therefore then offer and offer up to others to be able to apply it in their lives too. I learn from everybody every day, just in simple interactions at the grocery store. People don't know what they give me, because if you see it with these awake eyes, it's unbelievable. Absolutely. So I absolutely love what you're doing. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom.
Thank you.
I want to end with a quote from Buckminster Fuller. I think I pulled it from your material. You don't change an old system by fighting it. You create a new system to make the old obsolete.
Yes, that's what I see you doing with effortless prosperity.
So good
100%.
luck to you. Let's stay in touch. Like I said, I'd absolutely love to help you in any way I can. Awesome. And yeah, namaste. Cool. May love light your way.
So much. Thank you.